the little speak button.
The little speak button at the bottom.
Did you go over that with Joel?
So if that's not on,
You're good.
stream can't hear you.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Whenever you're ready.
All right, I guess it's 4:36, we'll call the meeting to order. Moorhead Public Service Commission welcomes and encourages customers' input on issues listed on the agenda or general water, electricity, utility interest, time and commission meet permitting. Speakers are limited to a 3-minute presentation. Customers wishing to address the commission regarding a specific agenda will be afforded an opportunity during the discussion of that item, I should say. Customers wishing to speak on matters not listed on the agenda will be given the opportunity to do so under the heading Customers to be heard recognitions. Each person requesting the opportunity to speak is asked to fill out a request to speak form located in the back of the room and present it to the administrative assistants in attendance at the meeting. Any follow-up or feedback will be done via email or anything that cannot be resolved this evening. I guess first off, I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Paulson and seconded by Duran. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'd like to have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Duran, approved by Gilbertson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, number 6, any customers to be heard or recognitions? I guess seeing none. We'll move to item 7. Any old business? All right, seeing none. We'll move to item number 8, reports. City Council.
I have to report tonight that we have a resignation that we approved last night for Ward 4. Steve Lindos has taken a job at the Energy Department in Washington, D.C., August 31st.
Nice. Anything else?
That should do it.
Okay, thank you. Public Service Commission. Anybody?
I have something to share. So Travis and I were at the American Public Power Association annual conference last week, and it was great. I would encourage other commissioners to attend in the future. We had the unique opportunity to have Tom Heller with MRES take an award. As everyone knows, he's retiring, and they do have a new CEO with MRES. Also, many thanks to MRES. They hosted us for dinner. It was great collaboration with folks from there as well. But just wanted to share that commissioners should look at that in the future. I learned a lot of information. Certainly got up to speed on some current events in public power. So yeah, it was great. I don't know if you have anything to add, Travis?
Yeah, no, they had some really good general session speakers, talked about cybersecurity, economics, and financial situation in the United States and the world as well, and then talked about the media and some of their sensationalizing and how that can impact the way people think and look at things as well too. So some really good main speakers, and then they also had some smaller sessions as well too, where it got more into the details, talked about natural gas utilities, even though you're at an electric conference, cybersecurity, strategic planning, succession planning, things like that. There was a lot of good information at that. Too many sessions that you couldn't attend because they were so concurrent.
All right, well, great, thank you. General Manager's report.
Yeah, a couple items here. Again, I was going to speak about that, but Joel beat me to it. Distribution of the 2022 Consumer Confidence Report, aka the Drinking Water Report. I'll let Mark Pritchard kind of speak to that next, but I'll go over the one other thing on here as well too. Western Area Power Administration provided a preliminary drought adder notification. Again, we get one June-ish timeframe, and then we get the final notice usually in October. Again, right now they're looking at no changes to the drought adder. They're not going to remove what they just put on at the beginning of the year, but they're not going to add to it at this point in time. There are some conversations going on about WAPA looking to do another rate study in 2024. And if they make those adjustments, that would be starting in January 1, 2025. So more to come on that as well too. Mark, if you want to talk about the consumer confidence report, I'll let you go at it.
Thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Manager. As Travis had mentioned, we did complete the annual consumer confidence report for Moorhead Public Service here in June. Each year, we get a series of laboratory results back in conglomeration with various pieces of data from the Minnesota Department of Health. And what we do for the annual consumer confidence report is we put in relevant information so that customers can see what has been tested and what were the results for those tests. So depending on the year, it may fluctuate on what samples are designated in that report. Some things may have older dates because they're so stable they aren't checked on a very frequent basis, just due to the fact that they are very consistent over time. So for the 2022 calendar year, MPS Water Plant was able to meet all of the regulatory obligations it was mandated to meet, so that was some very good news there. And we were able to use electronic dissemination for the CCR. And we have been doing that pretty frequently ever since the COVID pandemic. And we've found that we can save several $1,000s annually by doing e-copies to where they need to be sent to. So that's a little bit of a savings for us, and it seems like we get a lot more questions that way too, having email responses come through for the CCR. So overall, it's a good program. It helps people understand what is in their water, and it shows that, you know, we're able to take care of what we need to take care of from a treatment perspective, and it also has additional information at the back of the report for lead in drinking water. That's a big topic of conversation at a national scale. It has some basic tips, hints, and tricks on how to conserve water in summer months and how to be good stewards of our resources.
Perfect. Go ahead.
I have a question. I have to ask this because I just watched the movie Blackwater. So how does PFAS impact our water supply? Or does it? Are we testing for it?
Good question, yes. So Moorhead Public Service has been in contact with the Army National Guard actually going back to 2016 on PFAS. There was a big push a few years ago at a national scale for the Army National Guard to test all of their facilities that are receiving water from something other than themselves. So for us, that would be the armory in town. That's the main location that they had some questions on. And first they wanted to know basic information like what type of water main serves the facility and what kind of service lines they have. And then they also ended up doing a national PFAS sample study to make sure that they didn't have any issues. And we were able to receive all of the data back from those sample results. We've done it a series of times ever since 2016. Everything came back underneath what the action levels were at the time. So for a little bit of context, PFAS used to have an action level of about 70 parts per trillion, which is a very low amount at the end of the day, but that was what the old rule was until very recently. After some more study, the EPA recently came out with 6 different PFAS compounds out of however many thousands there are in existence, and they have certain criteria that go down to about 4 parts per trillion. So with that reduction, we are still underneath that 4 parts per trillion. We did see that we did have some detects for PFAS, but for the ones that they have listed as actionable items, we did not have any detects, unless I am forgetting one from the sample results. But for the most part, we had non-detects, which is good. It's difficult to know for sure what the future will bring for PFAS. A lot of times, places downstream that don't necessarily have PFAS injected or put into the water supply can still potentially have issues. So I don't want to say forever and always that we're out of the woods, but for now, the water treatment facility is doing all right. If we do see limited amounts, we do also have the ability to remove a certain level of those compounds with our recent changeover to GAC filter media. That's been proven to remove PFAS up to a certain extent. So we don't have any now that we need to be worried about. If we do see certain amounts, we are still effectively able to remove them.
There's an online map you can find that there's an online map. I'll have to find it, but it'll show you, like, in your county, it'll show you where they have been found. And if you look, Fargo has, over by Hector, the airport, has had elevated levels.
Okay.
Because of all of their firefighting. Yeah, the
Oh,
foam that
sure.
they spray for that has PFAS in it, so I'll send it to you when I can find it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Learn something new.
Watch the movie, Sebastian. It's good.
I'll have to check it out.
It's an interesting one. Couple other quick items. Again, the annual management report is on consent. Something good to look at. Again, a lot of this we talk about throughout the year, giving updates, whether it's competitiveness on rates, how our operations do, finances as well. Those are all included in that. Take a look at it. It's got a lot of good information in there to see how 2022 went. Again, it was a pretty good year, so, but yeah, if you have any questions, please ask.
Go ahead.
I have a quick question, actually, going back to, what we were just talking about. The drought report, just the word drought made me think of this. I saw a news article this morning about, due to all of the intense heat across the country, that some places might be experiencing blackouts. And I think back to a few years ago where there were rolling blackouts and we were sending
Power to Texas.
power to Texas, exactly. And not everybody has necessarily supported that decision. Have we heard anything lately? Do we have any, I mean, do we
What's
have
the
any?
update? Sure.
Yeah, what's the outlook update?
Yeah, so again, SPP, MISO, along with APPA and NERC, they've all kind of done their summer outlook on what it's gonna look like. We're in an area where there's some potential there, very limited potential. It was actually in, I think, either the last meeting or the meeting before's general manager's report. There was some stuff in there talked about this area, both in SPP and MISO. Now, we're in SPP, so of course we go all the way down to basically the northern tip of Texas. There's gonna be some chances of that. Again, heat is gonna impact that, drought could impact that with the water supply or the power supply coming from the Missouri River hydro dams. This week, we've been in a resource advisory for the whole week. Prior to that, it's probably 2 or 3 weeks before we have one, so it's limited. Not gonna say it could get worse. Again, we have all that information on our website, and that gets updated as those things change. But we do it not to SPP's level, cause there's actually 8 levels within SPP. We look at it from 3 levels, and that's working in conjunction with Missouri River Energy Services. Basically, normal operations, some risk, or where we've got generation, where our generation would be running, and then to the rolling blackout situation as well too. So, yeah, there is some concern with that. It's very light at this so far this year. It could get worse depending on if the drought continues, but we also do on a weekly basis update the website for the drought conditions as well, so that gets updated as well. So all that information is right on the website.
Thank you.
Yep. Other than that, annual report, just wanted to let the commission know as well too. Mark Moylan and I have been meeting with City Manager Molly. Again, the transfer agreement ends at the end of this year, so we're trying to work on what that looks like for the next one. So we'll have more conversations, and we'll get commission and council involved if need be, or we'll just bring an agreement forward to you guys.
Perfect. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Item E, accept report on decommissioning of wind turbines.
Sure. We brought this forward, it's gotta be about 5, 6 years ago. We updated the commission. At that point in time, we were having some struggles with the wind turbines. That has extended on. With a lot of new faces, we wanted to kind of give an update. They are 6 years older, and I'm gonna let Taylor kind of speak to the background on this and what our plan is with those turbines. And as you know, we'll have to figure out what we wanna do with those coming up here sooner rather than later. Go ahead, Taylor.
Thanks, Travis. Good evening, Commissioners. Taylor Holt, Project Engineer. Back in late 1998, MPS broke ground on the first wind turbine and then erected the second one in 2001. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, the expected lifespan of a wind turbine is about 20 years. So both of them have reached their end of life point. Over the last 5 years, they've probably been better known to have one operating and one not operating. And then over the last year and a half or so, it's been more common for neither one to be operating. There's several reasons other than just the end of life for these wind turbines. Not negating that it's being difficult to find maintenance crews to be able to work on them. We're running into scenarios where they get operational for a few hours, and about the time they're an hour out of Moorhead, they start shutting down on us again, and we're reaching out to have them come back. That gets to be a little bit costly. For instance, we worked on for about a year trying to get new tips for the eastern wind turbine. They ended up being refurbished parts because they don't currently make parts or wind turbines of this size anymore. Once we finally got them installed, I think it costs about $12,000, but if we took all the power generated in 2022, we only made about $1,200, just for how long they were down. On average, throughout the life of the turbines, they were available between 80 and 95% of the year. This past year, it was less than 2%, and it's not looking good for 2023 as well. Throughout the years, back in 2005, we spent about $107,000 on work on the gearbox, and then in 2013 and 2016, we spent $220,000 and $202,000. Those are common failures in turbines, so the gearboxes are in good working order, but if we reach that point where one of them goes bad again, that's what kind of investment we'll be reaching to try to either get it fixed or decide on another path. We have researched trying to find replacement turbines so that we can start fresh with new ones, but we're running into some sizing issues with FAA restrictions on height, where the currently manufactured ones are too tall and they don't make any of this shortened height any further. There is possibly an opportunity, being that there's other wind turbines out there like this. Some companies are looking to decommission and purchase turbines like this so that they can use them for parts. We did receive some contact information late last week, and MPS staff are going to be reaching out to see if we could receive a quote, and probably work with John to see how we can go through a process like that. But at this point in time, we're not taking any action on the issue. This item is just a report. There's no action being taken at this time, but like Travis stated, we just want to bring you guys up to speed on the status of them, and we will keep you in the loop if we start recommending any actions to be taken. Are there any questions at this point in time?
You say less than 2% of time that they were functioning last year?
The term would be available, so what I mean by that is if the wind was blowing throughout the entire year, it would have only been available to generate power for 2% of it. So the statistic is whether it was blowing or not.
Okay. What percentage of our energy comes from those wind turbines?
Less than, about 1% or less.
Because we just
Well,
got-
that's total.
Yeah, total.
With last year virtually none.
Yeah, on average, over the 20-year lifespan, it was somewhere in that 0.5% to 1% of our energy needs came from that. It helps with demand reduction costs for purchase power. If they're running while we peak, there's a cost savings there as well too. We don't have to purchase as much demand or much power from Missouri River Energy Services. So it does help with some of that stuff from that extent. So yeah, we're looking at other opportunities and avenues to bring something else online that could help us with that not being a wind turbine and not being able to put those up because of the proximity to Hector International Airport.
Any idea on what your gain would be by parting out the windmills? What kind of payment would you get in that?
We haven't gotten to that point.
Any ballpark idea? Just kind of curious.
I don't know, but I can state that if it came to fruition, they would be paying for the decommissioning of it. And I believe we've received quotes in the $40,000 range for labor mobilization and work to remove them. So it would start there.
Yeah, I think it was 40 to 60, depending on if you took them down at the same time or if you took them down one at a time.
Correct.
I think was the cost difference on that. So we do have some estimates on what it would cost us to take them down and just get rid of them. This is an opportunity that has come up in, like Taylor said, the last week, so where we wouldn't have to pay anything to take them down, and that might be just a cost savings there, less of an expenditure.
And if I might add to that, I mentioned the gearboxes. They're in current working order, which means they would be more value to that company right now, where if we got 5 more years out of them, there'd be more degradation of the gearboxes, meaning the value for sale would be less, and that opportunity may not be there anymore either.
You said they're too tall for FAA standards. Do we own, I know that we have property south of town. Is it because of the location or the proximity to Hector, or is it just an is that just a blanket
I think
regulation?
it probably really depends on the flight paths, and where they come, so even property south of town might be impacted by that as well too.
There's a Muni airport down there too that would be impacted.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd have to go back and see what those radiuses would be and how
Yep.
far out you would have to be to do that
Okay.
as well.
All right, well, it's optimistic to hear that you are exploring other sustainable things that we could replace the windmills with, so.
Yeah, again, a lot of it's really hard to do it, especially when you've got bright energy choices, when we can buy the RECs through Missouri River. Again, with how everything's working with the state of Minnesota now, you're gonna see those RECs increasing in price. So, it costs us roughly $60,000 to purchase the rest of the RECs to get to 100% net zero carbon energy. Those are gonna go up over time, so we'll have to be bringing that back to you on an annual basis, cause the cost could increase as well, and that's gonna impact budgets as well.
Travis, do you see Missouri River investing in more wind power in the near
I
future?
think they're looking at a gamut of stuff, right now, especially with Gregory County Pump Storage Project, being shut down or ending it and not moving forward with it any further. They're definitely looking at renewables, wind, solar and battery storage are all part of that mix. They're looking at some other stuff as well too, even looking at probably some small modular nuclear, as options, so looking for partners in that. But they're looking at it from all options are a possibility at this point in time. I think they're even looking at some peaking natural gas.
But bottom line, they're always gonna have coal in their portfolio.
They
right?
will have coal until they have to shut
Till they-
Liberty River Station down.
Sure.
And that'll really depend on the EPA and cost to keep those things functioning. I think they've got about mid-30s, maybe 2040 is the end of life of those. Is the end of life of that unit, or expected life of that unit. But yeah, they're looking at other things, and they're looking at member communities as well too, and how those can be impacted. They're putting solar and battery storage in Marshall, Minnesota, and they are looking at, I think, just solar in Brookings, looking at doing that. But those are gonna be their first 2 forays into solars in member communities, and then they'll be looking at others as well too. There's been some conversations that we've had with them for interest as well.
Does it make sense to replace the power generated from the wind turbines with additional solar?
It takes up a lot of land.
Mhm.
That's the big concern between wind and solar. You need a lot of land to cover what's built with, or what's generated with a wind turbine.
Sure.
And so it's hard to find locations for those, and you're starting to see a lot of places not wanting them just because they're not using the land. You gotta basically take it out of farmable or tillable land and put it into solar solar farms, basically.
Sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think we'll be seeing a lot of different things. Hydrogen generation is another one that's starting to get more interest. That's gotta be at least 10 years out before I think that's even functional. So it's gonna be interesting here for the next 10 to 20 years when it comes to generation.
Anything else? No? Okay, item number 10, accept public comments and approve surface water intake protection plan.
Sure, I will start this one off and then I'm gonna hand it off to Mark Pritchard. Mark's been working on our surface water intake protection plan for the last couple of years. And this is kind of more of a voluntary piece of this, but we wanted to provide the opportunity for the public to give input on this and then for the commission then to take action and approve it. We've talked about this the last couple of months, or at least a month ago. And I'm gonna Minnesota Department of Health kind of suggested we go through this process, even though it is voluntary. So I'm gonna hand it over to Mark, let him talk about the surface water improvement or intake protection plan. Excuse me, go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Manager. As Travis had mentioned, this is kind of the final step in our finalization of the intake protection plan. So going back all the way to the fall of 2020, the Minnesota Department of Health approached Moorhead Public Service staff and asked us what our interest level was in doing a voluntary protection plan of this nature. Over the past few years and really the past decade, there's been a real increase in activity as far as wellhead protection activities and surface water protection activities throughout the state of Minnesota. And various regulatory agencies, including the Department of Health, the DNR, the MPCA, there's been a lot of work done to first itemize what the status of each source gone through in sequence and talked with utilities that they thought would be most likely to go through the process. And there was a few in southern Minnesota. Fairmont did one. They're a surface water utility. Minneapolis-St. Paul region did one. St. Cloud did one. We were next on their list to gauge interest, and we of course said yes, we would be very interested, because for the past 5 to 10 years or so, Moorhead Public Service water plant has noticed a degradation in the quality of the Red River of the North, and we wanted to get involved with any and all activities to mitigate that to the best extent possible. So that's how this process really started back in 2020. The first phase of the actual intake protection plan involved making what was called a source water assessment for the Red River of the North. That was really the identification stage of what do we have that we need to be watching, monitoring, gathering data on. And then step 2, after that identification step was completed, was the actual formulation of the intake protection plan that we have a paper copy of that has been available for public comment since the beginning of this month. So the intake protection plan proper has 48 different steps or potential steps that can be utilized to either monitor source waters upstream from our intake, or it can be things like spill mitigation training. There's a very wide gamut of potential action items that can be utilized in this plan. The great thing is when we were going through the list, as it were called, the shopping list as it was called by the cohorts that we worked with at the Department of Health, they said if something is in the plan that's listed as a potential, it does allow for the access to grant funding to accomplish those steps. So that was really what interested Moorhead Public Service when we were going through this process, is the fact that budgets at the end of the day are limited. And if there's a way that we can bolster our own budgets with something exterior to help accomplish some of these goals, we wanted to make sure that we positioned ourselves to do that. So that was really one of the big driving factors, was the access to that grant funding. So with the 48 different potential action items, a lot of them involve collaboration with other agencies beyond Moorhead Public Service, because at the end of the day, Moorhead only has control of what is within city limits. Most of the Red River is either upstream or downstream, so it means that there's a lot of collaboration that would need to take place in order to have the action items really go through and have an effect on the river quality. So that's where we ended up putting a very large team together that involved agencies from 3 different states, Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. And we worked together on not only identifying potential contaminants that we wanted to be aware of as we made these plans, but also identified various different partners that we thought could be helpful allies as we went through these action items. So that is where we get to tonight, where once the plan was finalized, we opened it up for public comment to make sure that the community had its involvement as well. Because at the end of the day, everyone can help be a good steward of our water supply resources. It's not just MPS or another individual agency. Everyone down to the individual person can help be good stewards of this resource. So that's where we opened it up for public comment. And up till this point in time, I believe after checking, we have not received any public comments. However, we still want to make sure that the opportunity was there for that to be a possibility. So we'll be accepting comments until the end of the day today, and then at that point, we'll be ready for finalizing. So.
I just have a quick question. At the Diversion Authority, we've hired the USGS to do water quality monitoring at various sites around the metro area. And it was fascinating, the different chemical constituents coming in from the tributary rivers from the west, and obviously what is in the red itself. But they're compiling an immense amount of data, for the streams coming in and leaving. I don't know if that is something that would be available to be shared through the USGS with your group as well, or if you're already doing that. But it's great baseline information, I think, and we're going to continue to monitor that on an annual basis for about 40 years. So, might be something that we could use or incorporate into the plan as well. I just thought I'd make a note of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, at the end of the day, that's the heart of what this SWIP plan is trying to do, is make sure that agencies from around the region aren't reinventing their own wheel.
Right.
So if there's a way to combine those types of resources so that it can funnel the focus of these types of monitoring efforts, we'd be open to utilize any kind of partnerships that are out there like that.
Yeah,
That'd be excellent to incorporate.
Sounds good.
So do we need to make a motion on that to accept that? Item 10?
So you can, so we had the public hearing, so you can basically just approve the recommendation on the agenda item as is for both points 1 and 2.
Okay, so I need someone to make a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, approved by Gilbertson and seconded by Durant. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anything else? Otherwise, I think that'd be end of the meeting then.
We didn't approve the accept report on the turbines.
Oh,
Oh, we did. Okay. I guess I will be looking for a motion to accept the decommission of the wind turbines.
So moved.
Second?
All right, I have a motion by Durant, seconded by Paulson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I guess we'll close the meeting then. Looking for a motion for that?
So moved?
Are we closing or are we adjourning?
Adjourning, sorry. Thank you. Motion to adjourn the meeting?
So, second?
All right, a motion by Durant, seconded by Paulson. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, meeting is closed.
Adjourned.
Adjourned.
Adjourn.
Yes.